we're going to restart our Congress. We are essentially going to say, everybody here, you're all kicked out, and we're starting with a new batch of people. With this new batch of people, we're going to have term limits. I'm suggesting 12 years here because we need a lot of really complicated IT projects to help us fix things. A lot of times politicians, they don't care about things like IT projects. An example of this is we have IBM 1 mainframes, these computers made in the 70s that are like as big as a building. That's what runs the nukes. That's what runs the GSA, the personnel office. And so that's why they're able to get super hacked. A bunch of the stuff in our government is run on 50-year-old IT. And one of the reasons of this is because politicians, they think in 2-year terms and they don't care about that. IT projects take a lot longer. So these 12-year term limits, six in Congress and 2 in the Senate, this is enough for a politician to be able to pass a big project and to see that project through, but not enough for them to be able to make a career out of being in Washington. And this 12-year term limit thing would wipe out like 60% of the people that we have in Congress right away. It would prevent like 60% of people from running again. Pay structure. Right now, a lot of our Congress, they make, I think it's like $180,000. And they have to live in 2 places at once. And that's just making them very vulnerable to corruption. DC is a very expensive town. And 180, right, if you split that in 2, it's really not enough money to live very comfortably there. So it just creates this environment where they are very highly incentivized to be corrupt. So if we want to get a bunch of smart people instead of a bunch of corrupt, stupid old dinosaurs, then we need some better pay structure. And so what we're floating here is a banking style pay, $600,000 a year, but only if aggressive performance-based benchmarks are achieved there. So they can't let things get shut down. They can't be sending all of our money to foreign countries. They have to actually take care of what they need to take care of, and they can become a millionaire doing their job in Congress instead of being corrupt. So this would cost us a couple $100 million more a year in our budget, but this would save us $1 trillion a year in corruption, and this would actually make our country way better, and it would actually make a bunch of smart people be desiring to compete for those positions instead of a bunch of worthless, corrupt old dinosaurs. So, next one, trading ban. Categorical ban on all trading of all stocks, bonds, of everything for politicians and their spouses and their dependent children while they're in office. All their assets must be held in a blind trust. We threw the spouses and the dependent children in there because this is the way a lot of, like Nancy Pelosi, right? She's like, oh, I'm not insider trading. It's just my husband, you know? So we got to cover spouses and dependent children if we actually want the trading ban to end. One of the reasons it's super important is, as we saw, like as COVID was breaking out, a bunch of our politicians, instead of trying to figure out how to solve COVID, how to stop this, how to navigate this crisis here, they were off buying biotech stocks. What the F, man? Similarly, in Ukraine, when the war in Ukraine was starting to break out, instead of trying to stop it, instead of trying to figure out what should we do here, how should we solve this crisis in a reasonable way, a bunch of these corrupt old dinosaurs were out there buying defense stocks. If they always have financial vested interest to make the worst decisions possible, then we are always going to get the worst solutions possible. So we got a categorical trading ban. They're never going to pass that law on their own. We got to force it down their throat. Next one, a international lobbying ban. We have a bunch of companies, all the biggest companies in the world, they don't see themselves as American companies. They see themselves as multinational companies or as supranational. If you're Google, if you're Apple, if you're whoever, you're super rich and you operate in every country. So you have the best lawyers, you have the best lobbyists, you have the best everything in every country, right? So you don't see yourself as necessarily constrained to any one little box here. You see yourself as above that. And that's a huge problem. In addition to their attitude there, they put their international headquarters in these countries where there's really low tax rates or where there's really sketchy laws. And it'll be American companies that go do that. So they'll pay taxes on their American revenue, and they'll have to follow rules on their American stuff, but then they get to go just run wild around the world. So, new rule, all companies, if you want to have an audience with the United States government, you will put your international headquarters, you will domicile your company in the United States, your international headquarters, period, end of story. Companies that do not do that, if they want to lobby our government, they need to go through the diplomatic channels of the country where they are domiciled in. And so this would close the door to a lot of the nonsense and shenanigans that causes a bunch of these wars, and that causes a bunch of these foreign aid rackets. Next up, virtual Congress. Politicians need to spend at least 50% of their time in their home district. A lot of the problem is a lot of the politicians, they get elected, they go over there to Washington, they spend their whole career there, and they are super disconnected from the actual issues in their district facing their actual constituents. So we need our politicians to be spending 50% of their time in their home district, mandatory, and we need them to spend 0% of their time in foreign countries. K Street is like the lobbyist Wall Street. That's in Washington. How we can crush K Street here is we could say that lobbyists are only allowed to talk to the politicians while they're in their district. So we can crush it and decentralize it and make it not such a powerful, pernicious force here. And make sure that as their people are trying to get lobbied, at least that they're in their home district and that we have the chance to go push back on that. Next thing, staff budget increase. The budget that our congresspeople and our senators get to run their staffs here is super low, considering how expensive it is in DC. So a lot of times, all the laws aren't written by the congresspeople or their staffs at all. A lot of the times, all of our laws, all this important stuff is written by a bunch of corporate lobbyists. What the F, man? So we need to say, all right, we're going to give you enough money to pay your staff more, and we are not going to allow any more laws to be written by corporate lobbyists. Period. End of story. Next thing, we're going to put a page limit on laws. One of the really tricky little things they like to do to get us here, and the ways that they hide their BS, is they pack it all together. They'll be like, okay, we're going to make some rules about these farms over here in the Midwest, and we're going to do some war funding for Yemen. That was an actual example of something they actually did. They knew that these farmers needed help there, and they knew that none of us wanted to fund this war BS in Yemen. Most of us can't even say where Yemen is even at. So check it out. Our politicians, they went and they bundled all this together, and they're like, Yemen and helping the farmers. And so if you were opposed to this bill, they'd be like, oh, you hate the farmers. So we need to be like, no, decoupling that. Single issue bills, and laws are limited to a few hundred pages. If laws cannot be understood by a regular person, then they should not be a law at all. If our government expects us all to follow laws, then those laws need to be written in ways that regular people can understand. That is the new rules for Congress, and that would make things work a lot better. And a lot of this stuff, it's wonky, boring stuff, but it's stuff that pretty much everybody can agree on. Any reasonable person. The only people that do object to this is the congressmen themselves. Stuff like term limits, that's polled at 90% popularity for like decades on end. And the reason that it never gets passed is because the people that actually would have to do it would be legislating themselves out of a job. They're never going to do that. So again, we're going to get these guys out of here. We're going to force some new rules down these worthless dinosaurs' throats. Unlock the future, keys in your